I don't play by the rules,
Ah,
including that one, which means I play by the rules. Which,
yeah.
wait, no.
Grimsburg reminds me of a transformer, but I won't say which one it is. Okay, it's Grimlock.
No. Grimsburg was set in a town with a high fatality rate.
Grimsburg is murder mystery meets cyborgs meets so many other things.
Ain't that the truth? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fallingtower's Watch the First podcast, the podcast in which we watch the first episode of a series so that you don't have to.
But you still can.
Today, you may have guessed, we're doing Grimsburg on Hulu, the first episode entitled Pilot. They're always
Creative.
called Pilot. And we have a very special guest today. It is Professor James McGrath. He's a professor of religious studies at Butler University. How are you today, James?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks.
So happy to have you. Thanks for hanging out with
Thanks.
us. Dr. Muhammad Noor, everybody knows from Duke University, is here.
Woohoo! Always a pleasure to be on Falling Towers. Watch the first of things.
And my name is Ryan T. Husk, and the pleasure is mine. I've gathered it all, and I've put it away in my chest. Okay.
Share it with everyone now.
No, I will never.
Aw.
So I know it's horrible. Anyway, the point is, what I'm trying to say is that we are
podcast,
doing new shows for all of April. If it's new, we're reviewing it. And we've got cool professors joining us. What a special month April is, everybody. So join in the fun with us right now. Give this video a like. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate it. Let's play. Where do we go from here, Dr. Noor?
Now we're in a predicament where we predict what each other thought of the show without giving away our own opinions of it.
It's my favorite part, James.
It is
And
your favorite part.
I mean
My
it when
second
I say
favorite
that. It really is. I would want to do this for the entire show if I could, but I bet nobody would like that. So Muhammad and I have known each other for a few years. We can get a good guess. We can do good guesses sometimes. James and I have known each other for a few minutes. James and Muhammad, how long?
Couple months.
Oh, ooh, all
In
right.
person, at least.
In person,
Here we go.
at least.
This
Yeah,
is
that's right. In person.
interesting.
Yeah.
So we're going to make some predictions. Dr. Noor, I predict that you were medium on this. There were a couple jokes towards the end that I was like, Muhammad didn't like that. He thought this is done. He might have even gone like, oh boy. But there were a couple jokes I think that you did giggle. So I think you're right around the middle on this, but I don't think you're going to be telling your friends about it at the water cooler. James, I think you may have liked this one slightly less than Muhammad. I think that reaction maybe tells me I'm wrong. But I think that based on absolutely nothing, you giggled sometimes, and other times you were like, what? Not in a good way, though. Those are my predictions. What do you think, Muhammad?
Well, actually, I'm going to moderate one thing that you said, Ryan, that like I always tell people what we're doing it and watch the first. So I for sure would have mentioned it, whether good or bad. People always ask, people even ask me, like, what's your show for Watch the First this week? So Ryan, I mean, I know you like comedies. I know you like animated comedies, but I think you're going to say this was not one that was among the ones that you would like find extra memorable. I think you're going to be like, it wasn't one of the best. Like, I don't think you hated it, but I think you're going to say like, a little bit below the mean. James, I'm going to guess the opposite. I'm going to guess that you were like, oh, this is surprisingly good. And I think you were going to be like, I actually kind of enjoyed it. And you might actually give it not like a super, I don't think you like loved it, but I think you might give it a fairly high score. So that's my off the cuff prediction. James, about you?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, Mohammed, you actually liked it significantly more than Ryan did. I'm not sure where, but sort of in the upper half. And so, initially, with absolutely nothing to go on except the disco shirt, I was going to go with, yeah, no, probably not. But then, thanks to Mohammed's comment, I learned that you're a fan of comedies, and but what I don't know is whether you're a fan of comedies with a sort of detective slash horror bent, and so but those eyes might make me think, yeah, maybe. So uh yeah, my inclination was to think you weren't thrilled with it, but I might be wrong.
He does love Three's Company, I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm. All right, everybody. Those are our predictions. I feel like I'm wrong about Muhammad's because when he said it was surprisingly good, I feel like that was his inner voice coming out in his prediction for James. But those are our predictions. Everybody at home, it's time to make your predictions. Do you think I like this show? Do you think Dr. Noor liked this show? What about Professor James F. McGrath? Did he like this show? Make your predictions now. And remember that Grimsburg is actually what you get when you combine two words, GG and Rimsburg. So make your predictions now. And while you're typing away feverishly in the live chat or in the comments below, Dr. Muhammad Noor here is going to buy us a little bit of time by telling us what this show is even about.
I'll do my best. Divorcee Marvin Flute has been let go from his detective job in the dark town of Grimsburg, but he's brought back into the job to try to solve a murder kidnapping case. While on the job, he reconnects with his ex-wife, who had been raised by bears, and his delusional son. He teams up with a cyborg cop and chases down leads, but sadly, he misses his son's father-son dance in the process. After connecting with his former teacher slash criminal, he eventually figures out the police chief's son was the perpetrator, and in the process, learns a little bit about the challenges his own son may have faced.
Excellent. All right, everybody. I think you know what's up next, but if you don't, wait. They're making their predictions. Yeah, it is time. Muhammad, where do we go from here?
This is my favorite part. This is the part we call expectation, where we spend a little bit of time on what you expected before watching the show, still without giving away whether you watched it, and a lot more time what you actually got when you watched the show. And that's what we'll spend most of the time this podcast talking. That's when we do that part is when we do say what we thought.
You see, James, had you known Muhammad for more than 2 months, you'd know that he's actually training to fight Mike Tyson very soon, right after Jake Paul fights him.
Didn't he just die?
Mike Tyson? No, that was O.J. Simpson.
Oh, you're right. That was O.J. Simpson.
Mike Tyson is about to come back and box again. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, fun times.
Anyway, all right. So let's get back into this. Yes, what we expected versus what we got. I got lost in I started thinking about that fight. Okay, what we expected versus what we got. Dr. Muhammad Noor, before you watch this first episode of Grimsburg entitled Pilot, what did you expect, if anything?
I'd completely never heard of the show. Basically found it via Google. Never had heard anything about it whatsoever. All I knew was like animated, 22 minutes. The full extent of my knowledge about this show before we watched it. Nothing about the plot, nothing about who the voice actors or anything about it. I mean, I guess I didn't know it was new. I knew it was on Hulu. That was about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not much.
Well, James, Professor James F. McGrath, before you watched, and it was a comedy, before you watched this first episode of Grimsburg, what did you expect, if anything?
Well, before seeing any part of the show, I had no expectations. Let's leave it at that.
All right, I love it. Well, everybody, I'll tell you what I expected. I've got my Grimsburg shirt right over there, but I didn't want to wear it to give it away. Yes, I have my Grimsburg TM toilet paper in the restroom. And no, I've never heard of it either. I'd never heard of it, and I didn't know anything about it except for what Muhammad told me, which was it was 22 minutes, animated. You might have said comedy. I don't know, but I was like, 22 minutes? I'm there for 22 minutes max.
Literally was Googling new shows.
That's it. Now everybody at home, pencils down, no more Scantron sheets, and number 2 pencils, because you're about to find out what we actually got. There it is. Right. Number 2 pencil.
Oh, I like the pencil. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it. Like, I didn't particularly look at the time or anything. I was following the whole way through. I thought it was pretty good. I found it was witty, but, even though it was a bit predictable, it was still witty. There were some funny lines. There were many times where I laughed, especially in the first half. I mean, in the latter half too, but especially in the first half, there were many times when I laughed. I appreciate that it was light, even though, I mean, there were dark scenes, but like the murder scene there, it was so over the top that it actually was kind of funny. It didn't strike me as horror-like. It just struck me as just kind of ridiculous funny. I appreciated that, unlike many sort of Adult Swim type shows, it wasn't super crude. Because a lot of those, I don't know why, they always go like way down that direction. This one, I mean, there was a little bit of horror angle, but it wasn't super crude. But on the negative side, like, it wasn't the most creative. It was okay. It wasn't the most creative. There were a lot of cliches. I mean, there were a lot of things where you could kind of just predict what was going to happen next. But for something light in the background, it was enjoyable. So that's my off the cuff. Happy to go back in terms of like funny scenes and favorite characters and stuff later on.
There's definitely something you said there I want to go back to. But sorry, go ahead, James. What did you actually get?
Yeah. So I was inclined to like it because there are a number of animated shows where they sort of have pushed boundaries. Whether it was The Simpsons, favorite of professors, and as a professor who has been trying to cope for more than a decade with the fact that students don't get Simpsons references anymore, I'm always looking for new things of that sort. But also very much a fan of Lower Decks, which sometimes really goes quite far with the crude humor to the extent that is possible within a Star Trek setting. And this one, I mean, I had no idea how much more effective and how much easier it is to make fart jokes in an animated series than in a live action one, right? I mean, I just don't think you could pull them off in quite the same way. I don't know. I mean, there may have been something in the rules of the show that were extensive of this show that we're on now, where I was not supposed to mention those sorts of plot points, and give them away to viewers. And so, if so, I apologize. But
talk about anything about the show now.
Being open to comedy / drama. I think if anything, I had a little bit of disappointment just that it wasn't a little bit more sort of mysterious X-File-y kind of stuff, which is more what I gravitate towards. It was very much in the, no, this is a crime drama with a bit of psychological element in terms of, family background and, career path and broken marriages and things like that. So somebody who gravitates, or it's not so much I gravitate to sci-fi, but I more or less only make time for sci-fi. Well, it may have saved the show that there were, maybe more than one cyborg, technically, if you think about it.
Who was the other cyborg? I don't get it.
Oh, presumably the wife in the tube, right?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I missed.
I didn't know what her story was. That was just confusing.
Yeah. So it seemed to be in like an iron lung sort of thing, but a portable one, or was it on a dolly? I can't quite remember.
Interesting.
So.
Well, I'll tell all y'all
the mayor's wife.
Got it. I'll tell you guys what I actually got. I think they went for quantity over quality with this one. They're like, if we cram a joke every 4 seconds, it's guaranteed to be a hit. And that's what they did. And I felt like they just put in too much. I mean, I know that's a pretty good formula, is like, if you just keep the jokes coming, some of them are going to miss, no big deal. Some of them are going to hit, great. But I just felt like, okay, I felt like they were batting maybe 25%. 75% were not funny, and 25% were also not funny but acceptable. And there were a few funny moments, but I felt like it just felt like they were just trying too hard to just put in a ton of, because we all have that friend.
Yeah.
That Muhammad's like, Ryan, it's you. Sorry. But we all have that friend that's just like, just can't turn off and just keeps making those jokes and you're just like, Jesus, this guy's exhausting. That's what it felt like. Anyway,
Okay.
talking about Rico E.
I
Anderson. Just kidding.
I just want to follow that with an apology to all of my former students, if that was your classroom experience. I'm not sure what percentage of mine actually worked, but yeah. So
At
sorry,
least
just had to throw that
30%.
in there for any of those who might be listening. So.
I love that.
That's funny. So Muhammad's got his clipboard, which means he wants to really get into a deep dive here. But before we do that, Muhammad, my first question to the both of you is, we had quite the cast of characters today. Muhammad, who was your favorite character?
Well, I don't know if you caught that Rufus Pentos, the
German guy,
the criminal guy, that was voiced by Alan Tudyk.
Ooh,
Yeah, which I was like, oh, I love Alan Tudyk. Now, that wasn't my favorite character, but I thought that was interesting. The one I thought was the most interesting character was the chief, who was like that climate change denier, flat earther, blah, blah, blah. I was
Sasquatch.
Especially that ended up being plot relevant in the end for helping solve the crime. Because she would never have used the recycled paper. And she's like, it's such waste. That to me was like, oh, I like that. That was a creative use of that sort of stereotype.
Interesting. What about you, James? Did you have a favorite character?
Yeah, so I thought Muhammad was going to steal mine, and then he didn't, but he veered off there. I'm going to go with the evil professor who, he's only evil during, private office hour meetings with former students, but otherwise is like, so how can I help you with this problem, out in the hallway? And I was just like, yeah, no, I like that. And is actually, trying to help the person figure it out for themselves, give them the clues, but not actually solve it for them, so that they get both the sense of satisfaction, but also the learning experience, without divulging what that actually was. But that's very professorial, and so maybe that just resonated with me. I hope it was the teaching technique and not the evil, but
Pretty safe.
I agree with you, James. That was my favorite character as well. I thought he was my favorite character because he was the funniest. He just was the one where the jokes worked. When he said, let's play a game of cat and lesser animal to a cat. Like, that's just funny.
It was line.
It was funny. It was delivered well. So he was consistently, the funniest. I also thought the cyborg was pretty funny a couple times. And the skeleton's got some moments to him, I'm sure, coming. But those were the funny guys. But definitely the German guy was the funniest. Muhammad, I had a question for you when you said it would be a nice show to have in the background. I'm like, can you have this show in the background? I feel like if I had it in the background, I'd need to turn it down, because it's so like frenetic. Like, it's like when I'm thinking of having on a show in the background, I'm thinking of something I can just tune in or drown out. I don't know if I could drown this one out.
Well, looks like we lost James there for a second. The reason I was thinking it would be good in the background is just that the plot itself was not the most interesting, but like the one-liners were sometimes kind of funny. So, if you miss the plot, you haven't really lost a whole lot. But like there'll be a lot of just sort of funny one-liners like nemesis, just these little funny bits there that even if you missed everything else was going on, you'd like periodically tune in and laugh and then go back to cooking or whatever you were doing at the same time or brushing your teeth.
So if you missed the plot, you haven't lost the plot.
Well, it's not, it's just the plot isn't that interesting. That's not the high part.
Yeah. So here I've got I've got a confession to make here
Oh,
between you and me, Dr. Noor, and James. So here's my confession to all of you. Hey, James, here's our
Yeah.
confession to all of you. In the middle of the episode, I saw a scene that I had seen before.
really?
When he was walking, you reminded me, Mohammed, when they were walking, he said, he's my nemesis, my nemesis, whatever it is. And then they go into the scene with the German guy the first time. I had seen that scene before.
Like in a commercial?
The only thing I can think is that I put on Hulu and it just did like an automatic play of like a scene, as like an advertisement. Because it was recent. It was like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't remember seeing it. It didn't look familiar to me at all when I saw the beginning of the show. But then when I saw that scene, I was like, whoa, I've seen this shit, but I've seen this trash before. And so it must have been just like that Hulu played it like an automatic play of a scene, or maybe somebody tweeted it out as like a funny something or other, but I'd seen just that like minute or something. Anyway, that's my confession.
I've lived that moment, but I hadn't seen that scene before.
So Mohammed, you got a whole bunch of notes. Let's hear them.
So I mean, there were a lot of things that I thought were funny. So like I thought the intro sequence was probably one of the best parts of the whole show. The when she says something like that, you're a great kisser. My dad was totally wrong. Like, wait, your dad thought I'd be a bad kisser. And they're going about like practicing on the throw pillow, and then he said like it's time to move on.org. Like, that whole intro sequence I thought was probably the best part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, the first time there's a lot of just quick comments like, you tracked me down like a college alumni donation department. It's like, yeah, that's pretty spot on there. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly just a replay of a lot of the early scenes that I have written down here. Like the mid-century furniture is just this random hobby. Like those just seem so completely arbitrary. The nemesis scenes I mentioned before. The thing about the city having the unusually high number of killer clowns. So that was fun. But then like by the second half, I was writing down less. I don't know if it was actually less funny or if I had just gotten sort of saturated, where it was like, okay, now I'm just kind of watching.
I think it was Les Landau. That's a Star Trek director, everybody.
Yeah, totally. I did like one of my favorite lines. Actually, I guess the very end was also really good too. The only one I need to prove that I've changed to is you. Otherwise, you'll turn out into a twisted sicko like Stewart and frame me for a murder I didn't commit. I thought that was a great single line there. And the thing at the end with the fish all kind of flopping around too. Nobody seemed to care about that. Yeah,
that was sad.
That was funny though, even if it was mean fish.
It was cartoon fish. Who cares?
Exactly. Overall, I just found like a lot of individual scenes funny, even if I didn't find the plot itself super engaging.
What were the funniest moments to you, James?
Yeah, so I liked, I'm a fan of irony, so I liked, I don't play by the rules, including that one, which means I play by the rules. Which, wait, no. Yeah, and so these moments where they're sort of second guessing their own line of reasoning and stuff like that, found that funny. Like the flat Earth globe, and then of course being in religious studies.
That's funny
when it's like, it's like an exasperation. He says, "Detective Jesus, take the wheel." Ooh, I'd watch that show, and I was like, I would too. So,
yeah, good moments. Good moments. I've gotten my notes, the ones that made me tee-hee or ha-ha. Let's see where they are. There was a dick joke. I didn't really think it was funny, but it was clever. When he's like, "What's that on like his ribs?" And he's like, "Oh, they had to move things around." That's funny. That's a joke that I'd never heard before. Any kind of variation of that, so at least. And then the one guy that says, "Whoa, jump!" 6. Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Or Star Trek 6 when when that guy gets kicked in the knees and then he falls over. He's like, "What? I just kicked him in the knees." Like, not everybody has their genitals in the same place.
There we go. And then there was, "Whoa, jumping jacks are back." That was funny to me. Jumping jacks should come back for physical education if they still do that. Face fudging. I don't know what face fudging is. It made me laugh, and it also made me decide not to Google it. I'm like, I'm not going to Google that to find out what face fudging is. All right, I will. Hang on. No, dude, no.
I made the same choice.
Yeah. Or when he says, the only crime here is that belt with those boots. I don't know.
Yeah. That was funny.
Dumb things like that. Or when he called his son boy son, and then after that he called him child person, but I thought boy son was funny. The flute in the mouth wasn't, I don't know.
At least it wasn't a piano.
Right. That made me laugh.
That was funny.
Because not as much about when the wife, or the ex-wife, or Winona, I think her name was, said, good thing your name isn't piano, when they're laughing, but then when the cyborg comes in, he's like, because then there would be a piano in his butt. Like that's always funny. That kind of gag always works on me. The guy that's just saying the obvious. Or when the ex-wife said, back off, R2, to the cyborg. That was a quick little line that made me giggle. And then when Flute guy, MF, I called him because his name's Marvin Flute, he says, you're right. I need to prove it to myself. Kind of a sucker for the stupid people saying stupid things. Oh, Pete Davidson broke up with name TBD, add it in post. That was also funny and clever.
That was a great line.
That's the extent of it. All the other jokes missed for me, but that was a good, that's what I mean. That's a 25%, I would say.
There were some things which were just kind of subtle, and I didn't quite understand what, like in the very end when the kid and the skeleton were cutting off the heads off all the dolls, like, what are they doing? Why are they cutting all these heads off? It was funny just because it was so weird and unexplained.
Well, yeah. I mean, a show should start and end with beheadings, right? And not, have that nice bookend effect, right? So
there you go.
Yeah.
And this review will air on Wednesday because everybody knows Worf said beheadings are on Wednesday.
You did say that.
So we know that's
Star Trek Picard season 3.
A fact. Yep. Mohammed, what else do you have for us here? Because I've given us all my ha-has, and I didn't really get any more excitement out of this one. Although I didn't hate it. Yeah. It was middling.
Yeah. I mean, again, aside from the haha things, I mean, I felt a lot of it was kind of forced. Like the parents are always block out the sun. Like, okay, I get what you're saying, and like really shoved that one into our faces. Like, yep, I get it. I get what you're saying. I understand. I see where this is going. But that kept on getting said over and over, which I almost wonder if it was doing it over the top, so that would be funny. But I didn't actually find that funny. So, I mean, yeah. I didn't have much else to say about it. I think we've covered just about everything I've written down about the whole episode. The advantage of it being 22 minutes.
Yeah. Well, James, is there anything else you'd like to share about this show? Were there moments that you hated, or that you docked him a couple points, or you got like your red professor pen out and you're like, good. Nope. Sorry. -2.
No, I mean, I like stuff that's, profoundly philosophical, and I like stuff that is absolutely silly and comical and, has really no depth to it whatsoever. This one just, there were enough gags that it was, the first episode was like, yeah, no, I would see, I could spend another 20 minutes, do it while, eating a meal or exercising or doing something and fit it in. And, so I felt like the first, even the opener, right before the credits, and the credits were enough to kind of say, yeah, this is worth attention, right? So that was my reaction, the first time that I saw the pilot, was that, this is not bad, right? And pilots don't always, I mean, certainly that attempt to squeeze as much humor in as possible, maybe, this is us trying to convince the powers that be and you, the viewer, that this is worth continuing with. And sometimes it continues and is funnier later as they start to get, they get a bit of confidence, and they start to figure out what this scenario can be. And sometimes they put everything they had in that one, and that was all. And, a couple of episodes in, you're like, Yeah, no. I'm sure there's a lesson in this, but you really don't know, right? And that's what the fascinating thing is about talking about first episodes is, does it tell you about the show as a whole? If you gave up on The Simpsons after just a brief encounter with its very early days, yeah, you would have missed a lot. But how or The X-Files, how long was it worth sticking with it before you decide that it met it had was well past its sell by date? So there's all these kinds of things that you don't know, right? And that's the great thing about pilots. But this one, I would say, has promise. I think that anyone who enjoys animated comedy or animated murder mystery uh, or animated psychological parent-child spring spawn whatever drama should give this one a try.
Interesting. Very good point though about The Simpsons. Boy, oh boy, and a few other shows, they did not start off well. And if you judged it by the first episode and
Right.
said, I will no way watch this second episode, you'd really miss out because Simpsons, Family Guy, they also weren't, the best. A lot of times comedies, even I hate to say it, even Lower Decks didn't quite catch me on the first episode or two.
Mm-hmm.
But then it
Yeah.
really found its footing very quickly. At least in my opinion. When I say found its footing, I mean met my likes, my own personal taste for shows. It aligned with that. But speaking of aligning, Dr. Muhammad Noor knows where I'm going with this. It's time to talk about you, Professor James F. McGrath of the basketball famous Butler University.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about, we know because I know you from before, but Ryan's looked it up online. But why don't you tell the folks who are watching a little bit about like your scholarship and your teaching, and then afterwards I want to come back to some of your specific books.
Okay. So I am in religious studies, right? Hence my, um, you know, from God's gift to Grimsburg and all those kinds of things. Like I'll notice those where other people might miss them, things like that. Always on the lookout for pop culture references. My main area is sort of New Testament early Christianity. At least that's what I started out in. But at some point, I veered off into side interest in religion and popular culture, especially the intersection of religion and science fiction. And were it not for that, I don't think Muhammad and I would know each other, right? We have been on panels side by side in Starfleet uniform. That's the kind of thing that we both enjoy doing. And so, very much interested in the intersection of religion and science fiction, religion and popular culture, religion and music, and things like that. And there was some really, there's been some really great stuff, in Lower Decks, in The Simpsons, and other ones we've been talking about. And so, that's the kind of stuff that I do.
Have you done that in the classroom as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I teach a course on the Bible and music. I teach a course on religion and science fiction regularly. And we'll throw in friends' references into classes. Those are the ones I found like I can still do, and they stand the test of time. Maybe even become more familiar recently than maybe they were, a few years ago. I've also found teaching Bible and music, it's astonishing. Like there was a period when I'd make references to music of the 70s and 80s, and I get these blank stares. And now I think thanks to Spotify streaming, they're aware of the classics in a way that maybe they weren't before. I'm still too cautious. I don't know that I'm ever going to take the risk of making just an off the cuff Simpsons reference again. I think that time may be gone, but I will make them in conversations like this, obviously.
Hey, James, I got a question for you real quick. What is the most obscure religion you have ever studied or taught? I mean, do you only cover like the big ones, or are there like some with like 30 people out in Fiji study this one or something like that?
If you want 30 people out in Fiji practice it, then I probably have not gone to quite that level. But if you mean like 30 people in the world study it, I've got a religion for you.
Ooh.
So have you heard of the Mandayans?
Ooh, no, I've heard of Zendaya.
Okay. Yeah, I have too, and happy to come back to that. But this is different. So, have you heard of the Gnostics and Gnosticism?
Yes.
Yeah. So, most people have heard of that. And a lot of people don't know that one ancient Gnostic group, like from ancient times, actually survived continuously down to the present day. Historically, they were located in Iraq and Iran, not always hospitable to religious minorities. And so there are significant diasporas. They are a religion where immersion in flowing water, in Aramaic, which is their sacred texts are in a dialect of Aramaic. It's living water, right? The phrase you also get in the Bible. Uh, they are, they consider John the Baptist to be one of their own. Not such big fans of Jesus, right? So it's this fascinating religious configuration, and I mean, given how fascinating they are, right? I mean, an actual Gnostic group from ancient times survived down to the present day, and you can watch their ritual on YouTube, and so many people have not heard of them. And so, given any opportunity, I will throw them into a podcast that's supposed to be about Grimsburg, and just mention them because, wow, you just opened that door, and I wasn't going to miss that opportunity.
Love it.
So you mentioned the
Thank you.
connections to pop culture. You have a couple of books which do this. You want to talk about those?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, and given their interest in John the Baptist, my latest book just coming out as a biography of John the Baptist. But I've done things on theology and science fiction. I've contributed to some edited volumes on Black Mirror, Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who. I've done a fair amount with Doctor Who. There's an incredible series for people who are fans of Doctor Who. And yeah, there's a series called Black Archive that is doing a critical study, a short little volume on every single episode, going back to the classic series from the 60s. And so I've done one on everybody's favorite Doctor Who episode, The Battle of Ranskorov Kolos. Yeah, no, it's nobody's favorite Doctor Who episode, but it's got some interesting stuff in it if you're a religious studies professor. And I mean, I think the story, a lot of things from the Jodie Whittaker era, the screenwriting was not always the best and didn't serve her that well, but sometimes there were interesting concepts there, even if the realization wasn't as great. And so I dug beneath the surface. If you're a fan of the show, I'd give it a look. Read the other volumes if that's not one that means something for you. There's always something in Doctor Who. It's been around long enough, like Star Trek, that there's probably something in there for just about everyone.
Want to give a couple of your Star Trek examples? Because I suspect there are multiple people watching this who are especially Trek fans.
Yeah, sure. What do you have in mind? Like Star Trek?
There's something you've written about like particular episodes or particular portrayals in, I don't know, like Deep Space Nine, for example, seems to have a very like emphasis on the prophets and things like that. But even what is it? Strange New Worlds, the second episode, Children of Time, that had the whole prophecy aspect to it too.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, and in with Discovery and Strange New Worlds, I mean, I've just loved that. I mean, when you have, I mean, I would love somebody to actually research this, but I'm guessing that moment when they go back to like the original pilot from Star Trek is like, previously on Star Trek, and you're going back like more than half a century. I mean, that's quite something, right? And I mean, it's fan service, but it's also showing that nowadays you can go back and watch stuff and rewatch stuff, and if you missed it the first time around, you can pause your show that you're watching and go back and watch the other thing and then watch it again. All kinds of possibilities for viewing. But yeah, Star Trek has been full of it. And one thing that's fascinating is that Gene Roddenberry is a secular humanist, and so a lot of people think of Star Trek's vision for the future as secular, right? There's no chaplain on the Enterprise. As I've thought about that, as somebody who spends way too much time thinking about these things, imagine that you couldn't have a chaplain for every possible obscure religion that could be on the Enterprise. And so what they need is an emergency clerical hologram, right? That appears that says, please state the nature of your spiritual emergency, right?
Oh my God.
And thankfully the doctor, the actor who played the doctor actually did play a priest at one point. So I actually made a meme with this. It's like, but Captain Kirk in the original, the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before, wasn't the first episode to air, but was the one that got the show off the ground. You have these figures who are turning into godlike entities, right? Who are going to be a constant appearance on there. And Captain Kirk is saying, if anything, a god needs compassion, right? Talking to his friend Gary Mitchell, who's turning into a god. Uh, Later, in a notoriously unpopular Star Trek movie, will mention that God has no need of a starship, right? And so,
Right.
actually, one of my chapters in a volume on Star Trek and philosophy is about a God needs compassion, but not a starship, right? And about how there's this exploration of there's some theological presuppositions that are there, even though they're not often explicit. So Star Trek has lots of riches, and we'll see whether Grimsburg in the long run has anything remotely like that.
Doubt it.
It's interesting. Star Trek doesn't have a chaplain, but it does have a chapel. Because remember, in Balance of Terror, they were getting married in a chapel on the ship.
And a nurse
Yeah.
chapel. So
That too.
That's where I thought you were going with this.
Yeah.
It's like they have a chapel.
No, I wasn't doing the pun.
Yeah, there's a lot
That's
of
Ryan's
and
shop.
there's a lot of religious thing, especially in Deep Space Nine. They definitely talk about religion and cover it. Some races believe in the religions, others are like, those are just aliens, bro. But
Yeah.
good stuff. Great stuff,
So-
James.
Yeah, but I have to share this. So somebody asked me once. I actually was giving a talk at like a seminary about Star Trek and theology and religion and stuff like that, and was talking about lack of clergy on the Enterprise and stuff like that, and asked is there any character that's even remotely like fills the role of clergy? And they figured I was Guinan, right? And so what does it say about this, that the nearest figure to a chaplain is the bartender, right?
Perfect. I think Quark would agree with that too.
So you
So
have a very active account on Twitter/X. Can you tell people where to follow you there as well as other places?
yes.
Sure. Just if you look for religion prof, or you put in James F. McGrath. The reason he's a middle initial is that if you're Irish, you'll know that my first name and last name in combination are not uncommon, and that will probably get you to me. But religion prof, all one word, will also probably do the trick.
Religion
Awesome.
prof. Everybody go check that out. So Muhammad kind of halfway did something here.
I did the whoop.
He did a karate chop, which everybody knows is the universal symbol for the terrible
bottom line.
twos. It's
Bottom
the
line.
final two questions of the show called the terrible twos.
Bottom line. That's what it's called. The bottom line.
What do you, James? What do you think? Should it be called the bottom line or the terrible twos?
I'm going to say bottom line because
Damn
I
it.
lived in the UK for a while, and this would be fine. But turning it around the other way, I won't do that.
Right.
In case you have
That
any
is
British people
that's
watching, because
Definitely a British thing. And don't do this.
Yeah, no.
That's a thing too. All right. Final two questions of the show, everybody. Question number one is the toughie. Dr. Mohammed Noor, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this first episode of Grimsburg?
Episode called Pilot. I wrote down right after I watched it was a 6.5 out of 10. But above average. I mean, we don't use the grading scale. Like, that's not like a DF thing. It's like, above the midpoint there. It was okay. I enjoyed it. I laughed. I did not find the plot especially compelling, but I found a lot of the one-liners enjoyable, and the characters were okay. So I was like, I give away positive, but not over the top. So actually, Ryan's prediction was, I guess both of y'all predicted that pretty close for me. I think you said top half, James, and Ryan said like warm.
Middling, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I feel like a 6.5 though for Muhammad is really low, is really jabbing at someone. But maybe I'm wrong.
Better than Silverhawks.
Yeah, jeez, that's right. What about you, James? Scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, I'd probably say a 7. Yeah, that's what I was thinking even before I heard Muhammad. So it was interesting. I didn't actually expect you to come in below me, which is interesting. Now we know which of us is more prone to grade inflation, probably.
It's a curve.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know what grade inflation is, but I think that was the decade
That's
after
a
the 30s,
long
right?
conversation.
All right. I gave it a 5. I gave it a 5. I mean, because I don't think it was as bad as how I felt about it. I felt like it was a 4, but I think it deserves better than a 5, maybe like a 6 or 7. And so I'm just going to give it a 5 because it's not quite for me, But I bet there's some people whose brains work a lot faster and better than mine that are like, hey, this is funny. I like all these jokes. And my brain's like, stop with all the dumb jokes. Just give me one per minute and make it a good one. That's how I feel about that stuff as I
did look up the
angrily
reviews
watch
online,
shows.
and they weren't over the top. The reviews online were pretty moderate. So I mean, you're actually pretty consistent with the broader sentiment.
These guys get it. All right. So question number 2. This is the one that Hulu's like, we don't care about all that stuff. We only care
Ooh,
about
can I
the
do it?
bottom. Yes.
Can I do this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. For the purpose of this podcast, we had to evaluate the first episode of Grimsburg called Pilot. But now that the podcast is over and we're free to move about the internet, Dr. Mohammed Noor,
Yes,
would you watch the second episode?
Nailed it.
We've done this a few times, as you can guess. The answer is probably not. Like, I wouldn't be opposed if somebody put it on. I would 100% watch it. But am I going to go click that button? I would have to be like completely out of other options. So probably not.
Not even in the background, huh?
I mean, there's enough. I mean, I usually put Star Trek in the background. I've been playing like through Enterprise in the original series. I'd probably rather do that than watch this.
Good choice. And yourself, James?
Yeah. It's so funny. I'm when I don't have anything else that's just appeared, then I'm actually I did the original series. Now I'm in Next Generation, but I'm doing a rewatch. And stuff has to compete with that. I mean, it's enough like things I like, and there's enough in the pilot that I would be willing to give it another try, especially if if someone were to do a show, like watch the second episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's our sequel.
Yep.
So I at the very least I will come back for that. We'll have a reunion. 10 years from now, we'll finally watch the second episode of Grimsburg. But when everybody's like Grimsburg, who remembers that from? Or it's this big hit that's still going strong because
10 seasons,
it actually turned out to have but it was enough like things that I like that I would certainly be willing to, but it certainly wasn't. It's not a top priority.
Right. Wow. It's 1-1, everybody. We have 1 no, 1 yes, and this is the rubber match. That's a baseball term. Not something that doesn't start fire well. Okay. So my answer is obviously no. It's a no from me. I would not watch it. I think if somebody had it on and I was hanging out with them, I might be curious enough to be like, let's see if it gets better. I'd be like, you like this? All right, I'll try. Oh yeah, that guy was funny. I'd try to like get into it a little bit, but of my own volition, no. And that is just a true ass answer.
That was fast editing.
Thank you. Yeah, I muted myself. I said, what the? Okay. Anyway, so what we're trying to say here is that this podcast was grim.
This podcast was much more fun than the show itself.
Yes.
What do you think, James?
Yeah, no, I think if you got 20 minutes, watch 20 minutes of this podcast. Definitely, absolutely, no question.
So this podcast is worth more minutes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I would say that the biggest fear when you start watching something like this is that you have these sort of types. Okay, this person's gonna be a cyborg, and they're gonna be like this, and this person's gonna be and it's like, are you locking yourself in where how many jokes can you tell with this combination of characters and this and so even if the second episode is better, how long can it last for? And so I think one will always have those questions about this, and in an era of limited time and increasing numbers of options of things to watch,
they did do a good job of introducing characters very quickly. I thought that they're like, okay, this is this guy, this is that guy. Now maybe that locks them into a trope, but at least we're able to grasp them very quickly. Like we knew who this person was right away, so that's a good plus for them. Mohammed, you have an announcement to make before we go, right?
You want me to make the announcement?
Okay, here's the announcement, everybody. We're super busy, so we're going on a hiatus. See you later. Is there anything more to add about that?
We'll miss you all. Thank you for tuning in.
We're gonna miss you guys so much. All joking aside, we're going on a hiatus because we are incredibly busy.
The water's here.
Yeah. I myself have added another full-time job on top of the things that I do, and so that's it. And Dr. Nora is insanely busy as it stands. So might just be a week, might be a month, might be never.
Wait a minute. You're saying you're gonna have me, they're gonna say, Jason McGrath came on and he killed the show. Don't do this to me.
Yeah, that's exactly.
You called me here to be a scapegoat. How could you do this to me?
Lame duck guest. All right.
No, but the highest possible note we could. That's it.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, we've had 213 episodes, everybody. So until we come back, whether it's just, a month or two, who knows? Until we come back, you have 213 episodes to go back and review. View. So we hope you do that. And keep your suggestions coming in the comments below of shows that you'd like us to review. Make sure to put the show where we can find it, where we can stream it, and we will review it.
Maybe.
That's it, everybody. We will see you next time. And remember what Michael Kenyon Rosenberg always likes to say.
Don't forget to be an organ donor, and don't forget to watch the first of things.
All right. Freeze frame like the German guy. That's pretty good.
Sit around for a while and force that shitty smile.